All right. Thank you for tuning in to Sistahsss. We're your hosts, B.N.Z, Bree.
Hey.
Nicole.
What's going on?
And Zahirah, that's me, here with the ladies from the JAWN Podcast. Ladies, introduce yourselves.
Hey, everyone. I'm Shellih.
And I'm Jenina.
Yes. So y'all got to break down with JAWN, right? Because everybody's not from Philly and, you know what I mean, they don't really understand that. But, like, I love your acronym, so you got to break that down for us.
So we're both born and raised in Philly. And the word JAWN is synonymous with a person, place, or thing. I actually posted because it's like in the dictionary now, but a person, place, or thing, or when you don't necessarily want to give it its proper pronoun or noun, then you utilize the word JAWN. So because we're both from Philly, we wanted a reflection in our name, some way of Philly. So we found an acronym for JAWN, and it's Just Ambitious Women Networking.
Yes.
So that's our podcast. There's a lot of podcasts actually with the name JAWN in it. So we had to look that up too.
Really?
Yeah. That's why when you search it, you have to put a podcast afterwards, because somebody does have the JAWN Podcast, but they haven't like published episodes in a long time.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's something we had to do too with Sistahsss, because that's how we ended up with the 3 S's. Because, you know, Black women, everybody a sister. So it's like, you got the show on BT, you got like we had to be like, find our niche to be a little different. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
We've been waiting to collaborate with y'all for a minute.
I know. Right? Finally, we're here.
Yes. So tell us a little bit about your journey with podcasting. What made you want to start?
Jenina just actually was telling Nicole the story, but go ahead, Jenina, and I'll jump in.
So I've been listening to podcasts for, I want to say, maybe like 8 years. It's been a long time I've been listening to podcasts before it was kind of mainstream. Like I listened to Serial, like when it was out, and that was like one of the really biggest podcasts when podcasts were coming on the scene. And then I just started listening to a lot of different podcasts, and I was like, I love listening to it, and I like having deep conversations with certain people. And you know, it's not that often that you have chemistry with people where you can just talk forever. Like me and Shellih literally can be on the phone for 2 or 3 hours and like don't realize and go from like this. It's politics, just an array of different everything.
Right.
All the subjects.
Right. So I was like, I think I could do this. Well, I think years ago, like when the Breakfast Club first came out, and I was like, I could do what they do, like, but I don't have any communications background or anything like that. And so I was just telling Nicole how last year was that year, because it was during the pandemic. So last year, Shellih was in town and we went out to eat, and that was like one of my first times out since the pandemic hit. Right. And plus right before the pandemic, I had a kid, so it was like a combination of like just being stuck in the house with a kid and being pregnant, and then like the pandemic hit, so I barely like actually went out. And so I was talking about the podcast, which I've talked to Shellih about for a while, about her doing it with me, and we just never actually started it, or I didn't do much research. But one of her friends was like, yeah, I love podcasts, that'll be awesome, blah 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 blah. I'm like, yeah, we can have you on as a guest. And girl, we probably had, I feel like we had our first episode out and recorded within a month of that conversation.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So we knew nothing about what to do, how to do it. Everything was like we learned as we went along. Like I didn't know how to edit. I had to learn how to edit. Like it was a lot, but we got here, and we you know, we keep growing and learning as we do more podcast episodes. So it's a learning process.
Yeah, and it's good, like when you listen, like I said, I listen to so many different podcasts, and so it's such an array of how people's production is. You know, some people have a lot of money that they put into production of podcasts, and then you have some people who's just sitting in their closet with a mic. So it's just, you know, a huge yes, and they'll tell you, I'm in my closet right now.
Right.
Right.
So I'm so quiet, whispering.
Yeah.
So what about y'all? How did y'all get started?
It's kind of similar, I think, in the same token. We started this Wellness Wednesdays. So, it was really important for us to unplug for work sometimes, just find different things to do and visit Black-owned businesses in the process, because that's also so important. Just having girl talking about different things. And I don't remember who suggested it. Was it you, Z, or Sabrina? I don't remember, but
it was Z.
It was probably Z. She's the one who loves to talk. Like Sabrina and I are more in the background. So I'm like, podcast, but like you said, we had an idea, and Sabrina's like the organized one. Like you got two business days to get your topic.
Yeah, you got the journal ready with like, what's our topic? What's going on? I think I did see so Nicole, you're telling the story on the basis of it, but the way it really happened was because we were on one of our Wellness Wednesdays, and there was just energy in the space. Like, it's hard to explain what that was. Like, it's not something you can put your finger on, but we went to this place called the Gingered Peach first. It's a bakery up in Mercer County, and it's Black owned. And so we started there, and they were like, y'all just look so happy. Can we take your picture? And so they did, and they posted our picture, and it was like, it blew up. Like, there was all these people, just like a girlfriend's out, day out. And then after that, we went to this winery, and we was having lunch. Sellers. And yes, the wine sellers. And they asked to take our picture. So we were just like, what's going on today? Like, what's happening? And we just was like, maybe it's our energy. Like, maybe we should share this. Like, maybe we should share this with people. And so I think that's how I probably did say, we should do it on a podcast. But I had never had any experience with this either, or doing any of this. We didn't know how it was going to start. We didn't know any of that. And, it ended up coming together. People came into our lives at the time to kind of kick off what we could do and production and stuff like that. And when we did our first episode, I think that is what put the battery in our back to keep going, because we was like, wait, people are actually listening to us. Even if it was 3 people, we was excited because we didn't think anybody would hear anything.
Yeah. And what was our first episode? Do you remember?
Our first episode was the fishbowl.
Yes. That was a good episode. That was questions. Fun. Yeah, that was fun.
We were letting people get to know us. So, and then we saw people engage with it. We got excited, and we're like, okay, maybe we can do this. So, kind of where it went from there. And what would y'all say? So, people have finance podcasts. They have this podcast. How would y'all define the JAWN Podcast? Do you kind of just talk about cultural events? Because we tune in, so we kind of know that you kind of hit different topics. But what would you say is the core of the JAWN Podcast?
I would say it's things we go through as women, as Black women. We call it self-help, because you might think you might be the only person that's experiencing this thing. But if you talk to other people, they're like, oh my God, the same thing happened with me. So pretty much self-help and things that we experience as women, and especially Black women. What would you say, Jenina?
I think initially my idea was just honest girlfriend conversations, because also I know that there's some people who maybe don't have a lot of friends, and you may be in a situation where you just need that energy. Like you were explaining, when you guys were out, it was just basically what you were feeling was genuine, authentic love. You get what I'm saying? So when you out with people who want the best for you, then you can put down all the guards that we have to put on when we go outside to the real world. You get what I'm saying? So it just was more let's talk, but we're educated Black women. We don't just talk about BS. We're going to talk about things that affect the Black community, things that affect the women. That's why we say welcome to womanhood, because I felt that change. When I turned, let's say 35, you feel this change in you where things that was important to you when you were a little younger are insignificant. So it's just more so honest conversation with your girlfriend, bring on people. We're trying to present businesses, entrepreneurship, even, just an array of things. I want people to learn something new when they're done listening to our podcast, regardless if it's something they're learning about themselves, about us, about Black history, about current events, just an array. You know what I mean? I don't want you to leave it empty. I want to fill your cup up, basically.
Right. Yeah.
And that's so important that you said that. And I think that's what makes people connect to you. that authenticity, that transparency piece. A lot of times, because I listen to other podcasts too, and they can be surface sometimes. And it makes me very hard to be plugged in and tuned in because I want the real. Right. I want to be able to identify and know that I'm not the only person, going through certain things, and just being able to relate to other Black women's story, their journey, and, different things that they're going through. That space is so needed. And I'm just so glad that, we're working on filling that space because it's needed. It's really so important.
Yeah, I think the toxicity of the Black woman trope comes a lot with not expressing your misfortunes, not expressing your unhappiness. Everything is supposed to be guarded and covered up and put under a rug. Like, no, I'm not having a good day. I don't feel good today, or it just comes from a lot of times our ancestors didn't have that liberty of actually feeling the pain. They had to cover it up and go on to the next day. And that just builds up and becomes like a generational curse. You know what I mean? So we have to undo that. It's okay. Feel your emotions, work through it, because a lot of people don't have that tool to actually feel their emotions, and it just comes out in anger.
Absolutely.
And even the ones that might have that tool might not have the outlet to release that tool because other people around them might not be at that level. So when you're venting to someone, they're kind of like, I don't want to hear it. But that's because they don't know how to express their own pain. Mm-hmm. So I feel like this is important. It's important because the person that doesn't have the outlet needs this. And I don't remember who exactly said that this might be the only way they hear it and can relate to it, but that's true.
Yeah. And you also have to be, you have to be selective in who you distribute that energy to. And I think that a lot of times have been the problem too, where because of someone's position in your life, you may think that they're a trustworthy individual and that your emotions are safe with them. But a lot of times it is not, and it can be weaponized. So that's why it's you have to have the discernment of who is it okay to give this to, and they're going to process it and give it back to me in a positive way, not in a negative, because that happens so often, I feel like.
Yeah, I talk about that all the time. Someone that I thought was my friend is they're always calling me, venting to me, and I'm helping them work through their problems. But when I call them, it's I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Oh, what you say? Oh, I didn't hear you. Say that again. You did what? And I'm just when you call me, I'm giving you my undivided attention. I'm giving you solutions, but I can't call you when I'm going through something. So
our phone line be like the bat phone. So it'd be a certain hour. And she called me. I'm like, what's wrong?
Something going on.
Yes.
Yeah, but as you're aging too, that's a good point. Because I think the part that people don't talk about with the healing and the trauma journey and all that kind of stuff is the fact that you start realizing it's hard. It's really hard. It's hard, not just the work part, but then the aftermath. Because once you start getting realization and you realize that you're starting to treat these unhealed traumas, you realize that everybody can't go with you. And then it's that part of breaking up, losing friendships that you might have had for 30 years or 25 years or 15 years. And, the heartbreak that comes with the healing. A lot of people don't talk about that. And, the trauma, it's we're in a fight for our life because, doctors, scientists, psychologists, everybody has talked about the fact that trauma is genetic too. You can pass on your trauma, and we're talking about generational curses. We're actually fighting biology. People are get over it or whatever. They don't want to learn about it in school and at this point, but they don't realize that we are born carrying it oftentimes, because if it's unchecked and untreated, you inadvertently and biologically, transfer that energy. So it's really, it's we're in a fight for our lives, literally. I feel like it. I see it as that way.
Every day, which is why you need an outlet.
Mm-hmm. Right. But they have scientific, I've listened to podcasts where they it's scientifically proven that the amount of stress that has been put on a Black woman just by being a Black woman in America, it manifests into physical stuff. It's but that's why, like, just us, our generation, we have to give our children that liberty. Listen, we want to make an environment where they ain't got to worry about this stuff. Like, I don't want them to worry about that stuff. I want them to be able to work on their self, work on being a great person and bringing light into the world, not always worried about like looking behind their back. They always, no, I got you covered, it's rough, but.
And Nicole, you always talk about this. I don't know if I'm about to butcher it, but like, you say this because I don't know if y'all know, Nicole got a book, right? It's called but it's something you say in there, like you could probably talk better to it, but your story doesn't become your own anymore. Like when something happens to you, I think I'm butchering it, but like maybe you could like
right. She calls herself my friend. No, I'm kidding. But so I just always talk about how our pain has a purpose, and when we go through things at the moment, we can't really see outside ourselves, right? It's just like, why is this happening to me? Like, why am I being punished in this way? So many different things that we internalize. But the minute that as we start to work going through that journey, then you kind of have like that aha moment, like this story is not for me. This story is for me to share with other people, other women, other men, whatever, so that we can inspire them. So I say all the time when I talk to people, like, listen, this journey, your struggle is not your own. Like, imagine how many people you can inspire just again by showing that human side of yourself, right? Because we present ourselves as strong, Black, educated women, but that does not absolve us from going through stuff, experiencing hurt, trauma, all of those things. So the minute that someone can see, like, wow, dang, like, she's like me. I identify with her, and she went through these things. She made dumb, decisions in relationships, made all, bad choices, but you're still able to, recorrect and get back on path. So that's why I always say it's just so important to share your journey, no matter. And it's like, even when we think sometimes that we're going to be judged, people are going to think that we're dumb or stupid, but, you're always met with so much love, support, and encouragement, because this is like, wow, I'm not alone. I went through something like this too.
Yeah, I always say the test is for you and the testimony is for others.
I love that.
You gotta share your testimony. Let people know I went through this, but this is how I came out. And I always say, thank God I don't look like what I've been through. Lord, that would be a mess.
Right.
So, yeah.
And not hiding the keys. Like if you figured it out, how much better would it have been if somebody helped you, like, or assisted you along the way. So, that whole closing the door behind you, like I figured it out, so you figure it out, or I struggle, you struggle.
I hate it. It's so toxic. It is so toxic when people do that. Like, well, I wasn't given this, so somebody didn't tell me how to do this. Okay, so you figured it out. Help the next person. Like, why would you want to sit back and watch people struggle?
Right.
That's toxic, and it comes with like personal growth, because once you see that everybody ain't your competition, because what's for you is what's for you, what's for them is for them, but that just comes with like internal like perspective. You're like, okay, how can I do something differently? How can I do something right? And that comes with wisdom. Like, wisdom is not going to come easy, it's life experiences too. But also, like, I know me personally, I haven't been through a whole lot in my life, but I've seen a lot of people, and when I have a lot of friends who had a lot of childhood trauma, and looking at them today, you would have no clue that they've been through what they've been through as a child. And so it's like, some people, they use their trauma to fuel them, and some people use it to flood them. Like, you got to take it for motivation. But I appreciate and admire when I see people and they're like amazing, and then I hear their story and I'm like, wow, like that just shows your strength as an individual to like overcome everything that you didn't have no control over. Like, you don't have no control over if your parents is on drugs. You don't have no control over if your parents is dead. You don't have no control over if you was homeless as a kid. It's a whole bunch of stuff that manifests and affects you as a child that you didn't have any control over.
Yeah.
But I always tell people you have control over that choice. Like you said, either you're going to, succeed, or you're just, you're going to make the choice to continue the cycle. And that's why it's so important. Like you said, when we're talking about our children, or, even, other family members, and just normalizing certain things that, was looked at as a bad thing. Like, so in my family, I normalized therapy, and I'm like, I'm so proud that so many people have embarked on their own journey, through emotional healing, because again, it doesn't necessarily mean something's wrong with you. And I think that's what people say, only crazy people go to therapy. And I'm like, no, you're crazy if you don't go to therapy, because it's just like, there's so much you can learn about yourself. I don't care if you came from the best home, you had all the resources, known to man, but there are always things that we go through in our childhood that manifest itself, maybe not in the best light as adults. So it creates a level of self-awareness that everyone can benefit from.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah, I think we are living in an age where people are embracing therapy more. And I do think that because of the pandemic, a lot of people were forced to self-reflect. And so that's why I was like to Shellih, like, this is an amazing time for you to finally get your certifications and do what you got to do, because people need the help. People need the help.
And people need help from people that look like them, because, God bless all therapists, because it's a very difficult job. But if you don't understand the cultural implications that are associated with it, you might hear somebody's background and think they got abused, and it's like, no, like, that's just how we grew up. Like, it might happen.
And you can also unintentionally hurt somebody if you don't understand and have that cultural competency.
Yeah. I talk about me going to therapy all the time, and right now I have a Black therapist, and I was recently telling her, like, my last therapist was a white lady, and one day I came in with my braids, right, and then I came in with my regular hair, and I had got a haircut, and she was like, "Oh my God, you cut your hair," and I was like, yeah, but no. I was like, I changed my hair up a lot. I was like, that's one thing you want to see is, like, I changed my hair. So then, like, the next time when I came in with my braids, she's like, "Oh my God, what did you do to your hair?" And I just was like, no, like, this is not, I'm not spending my therapy session explaining to her about my hair. That's not what I'm here for. You know what I mean? So,
oh my, the obsession with Black women and their hair. And then, like, not too long ago, it hit me. I said, I couldn't imagine living my life wearing the same hairstyle every day.
You know how often I switch up my hair.
I'll be a whole different person tomorrow. Like, they all in here, actually. They laid around on the here.
Sabrina, on every podcast, you got a different hairstyle.
Right. Listen.
I'll be a whole different person. And they do that, like, at work too. And I think, some of it is just like, we take for granted that we grow up together in a culture, so we get it. Like, the same thing, if you dropped us, in Asia somewhere or something like that, we might not get it, but it's just like, you have lived amongst us. Like, we've all lived in the same space, for some time now. And you really think that I came to school with my hair in braids down to my booty one day, and then a curly fro the next day, and I cut it and then grew it again the next day. Like, I know we're magical, there's magic behind it. We ain't magicians, like.
It's crazy. And it's like, I don't go around asking you, like, "Oh, what did you do to your hair? Did you get a haircut?" But y'all always want to ask us. Like,
I used to think that people here just ain't grow. I'm like, how do their hair stay the same length? I'm like, oh, they go and get the same haircut.
Yeah. And I guess be ignorant too to their culture, because we're like, I don't know how your hair work either. So this is a learning experience.
It's a learning experience, but at the same time, like, don't care as much. Not saying I don't care, but I think for me, it's just the constant, like, inquisition. Like, Nana, you're asking because you genuinely want to know, or, there's a little side shade behind it. So for me, I think that's where the issue comes in. Like, people, you can do whatever you want, but it's just like that infatuation sometimes. Like, what is it to you? And like, I always want to like seek understanding, like, because I'm gonna give you the professional answer, I'm gonna give you, you know, the answer that you might not like.
You deserve.
See, and then like for me, sometimes being too woke is too much, because being as though I know the historical in America, how Black women were forced to cover their hair because they didn't want our beauty to shine.
Right.
And then when they did cover it, they was making these beautiful hair covers and all that. And so it's like, that's why people don't understand in America how it is so important for us to be able to express ourselves through our hair, because they tried to take that away from us. And then, you know, even our ancestors who were enslaved, they were using hairstyles for freedom, you know?
Right, hiding rice in their braids and things like that.
Yeah.
The fascination and obsession with the Black woman is just uncanny. Like, because if you look in spaces, there's nobody else that anyone really obsesses over. Like, and I do call it an obsession because I don't really see any other cultures that are appropriated as much as ours, like our hair, our food, our music, our everything, you know. The largest population of people who buy hip hop and are, you know, in music like that are white Americans. So it's like and it's different. Like, I think to Nicole's point too, like, it's different if it's an appreciation. If it's an appreciation, that's a beautiful thing, because we should all appreciate cultures that are different from our own. Like, everyone gets to be who they are. That's fair. But when it's an obsession, it makes you feel like a zoo animal. Like, you came here to see me. You know,
they used to have those. How about that? They used to have those animals. But see, I get it, because I know that, like, being as though the original person came from the continent of Africa, and it's like, I get it, because they took so many of Africans and dropped them off in all different colonies, and they did the thing for them. You know what I mean? Like, we made so many nations rich off of the labor of our ancestors. So, I mean, I get it. When you see somebody popping, you like, nah, I'm taking that. When you evil like that, I get it. We popping. It is what it is. And if we all collectively knew how popping we was, we would be great. But the whole purpose of white supremacy is not to let us know that. That's why we have to teach that's why I rock with Generation Z, because they be exposing people, calling them out. No, we gonna call them out.
Their parents, their grandparents, they have those tough conversations. And the crazy thing is that I was thinking about this the other day, and I was like, I don't even think that Black Americans are waiting for an I'm sorry. I think we're waiting for a thank you. Like, at some point, like, when are you going to acknowledge the contributions that are the backbone of our society? Like, there isn't a space that we don't exist. There isn't a space that we didn't create something that everybody benefited and profited off of. So it's like, I don't even need no, I'm sorry, I don't need no 40 acres. Well, no, I ain't gonna say that. I want my acres. But I just want to thank you. Like, you know, you're actually part of this.
Yeah, we're not gonna get that.
No.
I don't think we're gonna get that until the history is fully accepted for what it is. That it wasn't, that without that portion, there would be nothing today. You know what I mean? Until that's accepted, and it is evident that the people during that time who enslaved our ancestors, their descendants are working hard to prevent the acknowledgement of our contribution to be known. So unfortunately, just like we have this, just like us, we're like, no, we're going to let our kids know that Black history is American history. We did this, we did that. And then in the same instant, we got other people who's trying to go in there, take books out. No, we don't want them to know that this happened. We don't want you to know what our great-grandparents did to these Black people.
Well, you know what? White privilege also has to be fully understood and accepted. Yeah. They have to take that on so that anything could change. So it could happen one day, a long day from now, when all of that is done. That groundwork has to be done. I think it's that white privilege piece that's really going to have to be a critical piece.
Yeah.
Nobody's saying thank you until that's understood.
Yeah, we just had one of our listeners who's white on our podcast. I don't know if y'all listen to it, The Black History is American History. And she was saying how she didn't even understand or know about, you know, she knew she had white privilege, but she didn't know exactly like what it was. So for her as a white woman to express that is like, wow, you're so many other people, they don't, accept the whole white privilege thing. So Sabrina, I agree with that. Like, come on, y'all know that, like, even with our names, with me, my last name is L. So one time I went for a job interview, and when I showed up, the lady was looking at me like, "You're Miss L?" And I'm like, "Yes." She was like, "Oh, I thought maybe you were like Indian or Arabian." I'm like, "No, I'm Black." But I could just tell from like the whole interview, like the energy was off because she thought I was another person. You know what I'm saying? So even with like our names and things like that, like y'all have a privilege that we don't have, and y'all don't even recognize it. So
yeah. But the thing about the indoctrination that we've all have done to us is that unfortunately there's a lot of Black Americans who believe all of the falsehoods about Black people being lazy. Like I was like, even the whole, and like me personally, I like recently found out about, I'm like, where's this watermelon trope coming from? You know what I mean? And then it's like to find out that when Black people got free, they had watermelon crops and was running the watermelon market in the country. And then that was turned around and used against us.
Right.
Crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
It's almost understandable though why they don't. Like, we understand that, right? Because if you have privilege, how many of us want to give up a privilege? Like if you get to walk out into the world and just be, Caucasian and already, have it substantially easier, who is going to take that off and want to not have that anymore? Right. It takes a really strong person to be able to relinquish that privilege and be able to recognize it and say it's not fair. Equity is the reality and what should be existing, but you have to be a very strong individual and a very conscientious and human. Like, you have to be human, like deep down inside, like caring about your fellow person, because otherwise I'm not getting rid of it. If I have a parking space or whatever that's close to the door every day and a job, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh no, we have to share this spot now." Like, everyone has to be able to park here. Right. Maybe I'm gonna be like, "Well, wait a minute. I've been parking here for 4 years. Well, I gotta change now." So it's hard. I get it, but it's like, but it's still right.
But I don't even think it's a matter of giving up anything. It's just a matter of
acknowledging,
like you're a lot of times in instances you aren't even going to lose anything. You know what I mean? Like, there's some actresses that be like, well, if I don't get paid, if I'm getting paid this, like she did with Octavia Spencer, we're going to make sure she get paid this. Mm-hmm. Like, that didn't take anything from her. She still got paid. You still got paid. Right. It's just a matter of using your privilege to help people who aren't privileged. Like, you're on centuries of privilege. But the whole thing about white supremacy is that globally they're minorities. So it's like, because globally there's more people of color than in America, they're going to try to keep that majority. That's what it is.
So where do y'all see y'all going with your podcast?
I mean, I don't even think, I'll let the other girls go first, because I'm like, I don't really have like a goal in mind. It's kind of just like an everyday thing. Like, it's just part of our journey right now and whatever. It's not like, we need to get to 1 million followers, or we need to do this, or we need to do that. It's kind of like, as long as it's authentic and, we're still doing and feeling like we're doing what we started out doing. I mean, if it's 10 years, 100 years, 5 years, 1 year, 2 year, it's just, you kind of have to follow your spirit with that kind of thing. The same way we started it. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Oh, I agree. I don't necessarily have a goal in mind either. Of course, nothing's wrong with more followers. Nothing's wrong with that type of stuff. Like, we can have it. However, I think it's just, as long as we have breath in our body and feel that we have something to contribute to our culture, to human being, to anything like that, then I think we're good, and I think we can keep going, and we don't have to have a goal. We're putting good energy out into the world.
Okay.
I agree. And just to kind of, expound on that also, but just seeing what else we can create with the B.N.Z, sister space. Like we, created a company from this. And like, we had our first event and, looking to other business ventures. So like I said, this is just going to be one subset of what it is that we want to do, as as we progress through life, basically.
Yeah. I think the same thing for us. Like I've written a couple books within the past year, and Jenina is planning on starting her t-shirts. Where you go?
I think she's talking to somebody.
So she's planning on starting like a t-shirt business because we have so many sayings and things in mind that we want to do. And I'm like, well, why are we going to pay somebody else when we could do it ourselves? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So we're, getting the LLC and, doing things with that. So like you said, we can do other things, not just a podcast, but other things for Black women in the community. So yeah.
Well, you know what? I also think this is one of the goals. Like us collaborating with you right now. I think this is an example of a goal right now. Yeah. We need to be doing stuff like this. We need to be collaborating with other podcasts. We need to be working with other Black women. Mm-hmm. We need to be uplifting each other and just building our network, because we need that network. What we talked about earlier was that we don't always have outlets. We don't always have people to talk to. We have to be strong. We need to be building our network so that we have those supports. So I think this is a prime example of what we should be doing and what our goals should include. Is this collaboration?
I'm glad that we collaborated. And I know this season we're working on having more Black women guests on who are doing things in the community. Like that's one of the goals for this season that we're doing definitely is having more guests. Just, getting out there, getting different perspectives on things. So yeah, I definitely.
There's so many people doing great work out here.
I know it is.
Yeah. And we've talked to so many too. If you need people like suggestions, because like I know one of our favorite episodes was with Akira Solomon. She has a nonprofit called Mobilize to Shine, and I know that we'll be talking to somebody from Sabrina's organization, because I mean when I say woke, we were talking about it before we started recording. Sabrina's job has to be the most woke establishment, and your CEO's a white woman, right? Or I should say the head. And when I say she is, it's not a box that they're checking off. Like I have to say, it's a very authentic. Like they want cultural diversity and inclusion to be within like the framework of who they are as an organization, which is a very different thing than just having a committee, or
and just having Black History Month celebration.
Thank you. Yeah.
Awesome. Yes.
Yeah. So that's the biggest goal, though, I think that we don't have is the competition piece, because a lot of times and oftentimes, we're not creating this to be a space of, we have more than this, or we got to make sure that we get like this is, if we're doing anything that's even remotely close to that, then we have not accomplished our mission, and it goes against who we are as people. So we're about helping, like, okay, what you want to know this? Like we get questions about what mic do you use or what this, but I don't know tech, but if I have the information, I'm gonna share it with you. Like I'm not in competition. Like we're grateful for each and every person that listens, and we hope that we can help them. But this is not about like we have to be the top or we have to be this. Like,
yeah, I think that's why us as a community, we're so far behind and we're not succeeding. Because somebody came to me last week and was like, I'm so stuck, I want to start a podcast. And I sat down and I wrote out step by step, this is what you need to do first, second, blah, blah, blah. And she appreciated it so much. She's like, thank you. Same thing. Somebody I went to grad school with came to me like, oh my God, I got this children's book written. I don't know how to, go about publishing it. Then I sat down, I wrote a list. Like, I'm not going to keep the knowledge that I have, that I learned. Like, I Googled it. I went on YouTube. You know what I'm saying? I didn't pay anybody for it. And I find so many people are looking for money. Like, they want to get paid for things that they learn from the internet. And it's like, you're putting out these books, charging people, but you don't even have it. It's not proper English. it's not spelled correctly. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, how are you trying to teach people things when you're not even putting it out correctly? You know what I mean? So that's one of my things that I get like frustrated with. Like, you learned this for free. Go out and share it for free. Why do you want to profit off of every little thing? And this is one person, I stopped following them, but it was like, every time they learn something new, oh, I got this ebook. Oh, I got this ebook. Like, sir, you learned this from the internet. Like, everything.
Yeah, but people do. I'm not going to say that. I think that the time and energy that you put into researching things, and you were able to collectively like create a workbook on how somebody. Yeah, you should get paid for your time, because now I have to do what you did, but it's going to take me half of the time to do it. So I think.
But what I'm saying is, if you don't have proper English and punctuation.
Nicole, that's your pet peeve. I heard you say this.
I know. I feel like Nicole's like, right.
That'll set me up. Yeah. But I get what you're saying. It's just like, you know, and I honestly believe when you put that energy out to you, it comes back tenfold. So it's like, listen, we all have tools that can help other people win. So like I said, I get it. Now, like, you wrote a real how-to book, went to an editor, publishing company. Different. I get that all day, but you're not going to just be, merging files you found off the internet and try to say for the low price at $99.99.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, before monthly payment. I think, and we're gonna hold other communities accountable for what they transpires with our community. I think that we also have to hold ourselves accountable. And if we are anything else, we are the figure it out yourself community. Like, I did it, you could do it. Like, kind of what we were talking about earlier. We are not. And I think this is something that we are very guilty of in the Black community, and not necessarily other cultures, because if we like to hide the ball, we like to keep it to ourselves, because there's this mentality, that's historical, that there are only going to be 3 spaces there. So I can't, sacrifice one of those spaces by helping you. Whereas what we don't realize is we can just build more spaces. Like, we can just create more spaces.
That's rooted in white supremacy, because a lot of like key holders are lazy. So they're gonna be like, well, this Black person worked, we're just gonna keep going to that one Black person. Right. But that's one thing that I like with Issa Rae. And she was like, their whole thing is, we gonna have our own tables. We're not gonna have to worry about going to somebody else's table and pulling up a seat. No, we're gonna cut down that tree. We're gonna build that table ourselves. But
Black writers, Black producers, because we have all this creativity, and we don't have those spaces and opportunities to necessarily shine like that. And I think and then we have to talk about capital, right? So like, why don't we have those spaces? Because we don't have the capital behind us. Why don't we have the capital? Because we, really don't understand the idea of generational wealth and building that and being able to invest in our communities. And,
I mean, because that's just like it's not an even playing field. If your great grandfather was a slave, what did he pass down?
Right.
If your great grandfather owned 100 acres of productive land and had houses, what is he passing down?
Right.
It's just it's math. It's easy.
Yeah. At some point though, we have to start undoing that, right? We have to start leveling the playing field, because there's things that they taught each other, because there's white people who come from poverty and then figure it out, right? They figure out the secret sauce of like financial freedom and things like that.
I mean, that's true. They have poverty, but they also still have.
It's not the same as us. It's not the same as us at all. But we have to, and I'm just an accountability person, right? So I know that we are fighting an uphill battle, like it's literally straight uphill, but we can start arming ourselves with information. I think that's what comes from information sharing, like being able to collaborate, because, there's certain things that we can do, like get life insurance.
Exactly.
Life insurance can literally
so big with financial literacy, and with the pandemic and everybody, because I'm a tax accountant and I work for M&T Bank. So I work with trust and wealth management. So I see the amount of money that these people have. And this is money that's just sitting, and they're exclusively living off of the interest of it. So I have multiple insurance policies, but with the pandemic, with it hitting, I was like, maybe I need to get my life insurance, license, because I know a lot of people, like, they were struggling to bury these people or just to cremate them because they didn't have any life insurance.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's I think that's number one over like home ownership, like making sure that everybody has their life insurance policies. And I mean, even if you can't afford a really big premium, but that be the thing, like sometimes people may have a life insurance policy and they have a rough patch and then their premiums elapse, and when they pass, they don't have it.
It's also prioritizing what you spend your money on, because we're the biggest consumers, to certain things. So if you prioritize what you're spending your money on, because I know I waste money. If I'm honest, I can afford, anyone can afford to travel, anyone can afford life insurance, anyone. If you're really honest about how you spend your money, you can afford it. So two of the biggest deaths a lot of people incur in our community is death, burying someone, and college. So, the moment somebody has a baby, you can start saving in a high growth account for that child to be able to go to college and use that money, or start investing, so they have something to, maybe buy their first home, purchase their first home or whatever. So it takes sacrifice and it takes education.
Yeah.
Things. So
I think the mentality is because for so many years we had to live in the moment and we had to like worry about what's today, that it's sometimes hard you basically have to reprogram yourself to think for the future. But I it's like, I get it, because like a lot of times our ancestors, they didn't know what the future held. So we gotta worry about what's happening tomorrow. You know what I mean? But we have the liberty now to be like, okay, we know ain't nobody running in our house at 3:00 in the morning, snatching us out and hanging us on a corner. So we can start if you put in $15 aside, know that $15 a month that has to go towards your child's college fund, whatever. It's just, I think it's the thing of just rearranging what's important.
I think too, like a lot of us, well, I'm gonna speak for like my generation. At 18, we were put out the house. Like, you 18, you grown, it's time to go on your own. And you weren't ready. And then you had to pay bills, something that you were never taught. You know what I mean? You had to pay bills, you had to live, you had to work. And I wasn't ready for that. And so many people, like, that's where their struggle comes from, because, they've been struggling all their lives, robbing Peter to pay Paul, doing this to make ends meet. And we don't have to live like that. Like, you don't have to put your kids out at 18 and have them struggle, you know what I mean? Because sometimes they never get out of that struggle.
Right. And that boils down to what we were saying earlier, where people are like, well, if I did it, you can do it. If I did it, you can do it. So it's like, no, I don't want my children to deal with that same pain.
There's certain people that don't even connect with the if I have it, you can do it. There's some people that, even I know you said like anybody can save for life insurance, anybody can do this. There's some people where that is so far-fetched, they could never hear it. So I think the question really is, how do you reach those people? Because you can't come in and just say, you know what, I know you get $300 a month, give me $5. Because they need that $5. Like, they literally are counting everything they got. So how do you reach those people? Because it's easy for me to say I can save. Yeah, I can save. I won't buy me a Tory Burch this month. But what if you got to use that money for milk? Or what if you got to use that money to send your child to school in a bus?
Right.
That's the group of people where we have that middle class disconnect. Yeah, I could do it, but can they really? So, and I don't even have a solution. I have a question. How do you reach that? Like, I don't know. Like, I think that's hard because generational poverty is real. Forget generational wealth. The mindset of someone whose mother was on welfare and whose mother was on
grandmother, great-grandmother.
That's different. I'm telling you, it's different.
It is.
And it's something we can't come in and say $5 a month.
You know what? I think it's the educators a lot of times. I think a lot of times that's kind of like, they're the gatekeepers of hope. And a lot of times, if you, like, for instance, I'll see teachers where it may be a kid struggling and they know that the kid is struggling, but like they don't have the time or energy to like contact their their family get the resources. I think if we pay teachers more, we probably could crush that. Like,
or take certain things out of school that are insignificant to our children. It's a lot of stuff
and replace it. Yeah,
like algebra. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, seriously,
algebra is important.
It's important, but at the same time,
life skill classes, like financial literacy.
Definitely more. Yes, definitely more of that.
So right. So I think if it's because like they say, the children are our future. So I think like if children are given more tools and maybe they can understand it like from a macro perspective. But yeah, and it all boils down to like paying these teachers pennies, because I mean you're not going to devote that much time and energy when you're not being rewarded. Yeah.
And not to mention fair resources. Oh, go ahead, Shellih.
No, I was saying that was a good point. Like generational poverty, like especially depending on what line of work you're in, is real.
It's very real. And I was in a meeting, got on my nerves, but it was entertained that we can go into these impoverished areas and let's do some bus trips and things like that. And I was like, I didn't know how to express it because my thing is words. I don't always have the words to express exactly what I want to say. I'm one of those people that be in an argument and I go home and think about it and then come back. So I'm like, we can't do that. Like, bus trips are not the answer. We can't. You can take me to LA all day. You ain't going to never make me believe I can live there. Like, we need more than that. There has to be more of a pronged approach to this.
Right, but I think children are very impressionable, and I know sometimes some people might be like, there's people today our age who would say, we had a trip to New York and I seen, the bankers walking by with their 3-piece suit on, and I felt like, oh wow, that's what I want to be. You're not going to see that if you're in the hood. So I mean, I think it is a way. You have to have it planned accordingly. Like, okay, we're going to expose them to this and then follow up and give
you have to do something else.
Like give them the information of like, what you need to do in order to maybe accomplish a goal,
Exactly.
It's like,
exactly. It's more than just taking them to see it though. There got to be some follow-up. There got to be some research. There got to be some teaching.
It has to be intentional.
And it has to be make it known that it's in reach. I want to say it's Camden. They have a program. I thought the program was absolutely awesome, where they're teaching the children how to actually make boats and actually be in the boat. And I'm like, well, that's amazing. You're bringing something to them, teaching them how to do it, and skills they can use forever. Like that was more reachable to me than just taking us around a bus trip. I just don't see it. There has to be more.
Right, the real world application piece to it.
I think it depends. But like, if you're doing like a bus trip to like a Google, a corporate office or something, or a bus trip to medical school, or a bus trip to somewhere where like it could help them like figure out what they want to be when they grow up. How they.
I think what Sabrina is saying, like, you can't just come in a community and be like, oh, we organized a bus trip. Everybody get on the bus at 2:00 and go. Like, it has to be something before and after in order for this bus trip.
Because they know people have money. They know some people that have money. They just know they don't have money.
Yeah.
So you got to fill that in the middle. And you can't fill it by just taking them to people with money and never telling them how to actually get it themselves.
That's
and representation matters too. Like, you can't just take our kids on these bus trips and they're not seeing anyone who looks like them. I was a former guidance counselor in Camden. I remember, like I said, and even still teachers don't look like our students, right? So it's, again, yes, you can tell students all day you can do this, but if I don't see anyone who looks like me or has the same story as me, or I can identify with, then how do I think that then this can be, my life? And it's important. And I'll never forget, I made a career fair for our 8th grade students. And I made sure everyone was, Black and brown, Hispanic, and like the superintendent was so upset. And I'm like, they see, white people every day when they come to school. I want them to know that you can be a business management executive. You can be a doctor. You can be a lawyer. There's people who came from the same humble beginnings and were able to, it was the access to resources. So again, like Sabrina's point, what comes after it? So okay, you take me on a bus trip, but then what happens? Is there going to be a mentoring program tied to it where you pair me with someone who's in, you know, the Fortune 500 company? You know, what comes after it? So again, like, you know, and I remember counseling students, and I was asking them, like, well, what is your goal when you get to high school? And they would just say survive. Students aren't thinking 4 years down the line, they're thinking today. And if I have to go home and take care of my 2 younger siblings, you know, my mom is out doing this or whatever, like they can't even see, you know, 4 years ahead. So, and some of them who don't even leave the Camden city limits. So you want me to think about going to New York when I haven't been, you know, outside of Camden City. So there's so many different things that have to be, you know, taken into account when we're thinking about exposing, you know, younger kids to different things, because again, a one-stop field trip, that's not going to help solve the issue.
It needs to be holistic. Like it has to be a holistic approach, like, and not just the kids, like the families, like, because if you, even if you're sowing a seed in the young person, if they're going home and, you know, that's not a reality for them, you have to, it's holistic. Like, you know, even like welfare programs and things like that, they're not built in a way to get people to be sustainable for themselves. It's not really built. And this is probably controversial, but if those programs had an expiration and they were really driving towards people being in sustainable employment, finding new career paths, being able to learn financial literacy, being able to have therapy, and being able to do all of those things at the same time, people would be so much better off and they would thrive so much more. Because if part of the requirement for you to be able to get assistance with your rent or get assistance with any of that is for people to care and give you a holistic approach to being able to survive, you know, past today, and think about planning and think about estate planning, think about, you know, what's your college pathway? How do we educate you? Not necessarily, you know, college isn't for everybody. So let's talk about what's for you. Like, okay, here's a trade. Here's owning your own business. This is what this looks like, you know. And I think if that was came coupled with people getting services, which I think I work in employment and training, so it is changing a little bit, but the government services and things like that are changing so slowly. And that's why we have generational poverty, right? Because if great grandmom would have gotten services that actually cared about her in a human approach and holistically, they wouldn't have generational poverty. Because if you had gotten great grandmom the education she needed, if you got her the real services that were, you know, particular to that, and let her know that this is the length of the program. We're gonna serve you as long as you need it, but this is what it looks like. And here's our planned approach. And this is how we're gonna get you off of welfare. This is how we're gonna get you off of food stamps.
I love that, Z.
That's
exactly what it needs to be. I love it.
It does, but I think it's like the person who has the ability to change that, a lot of times, you know, they can't relate and it doesn't really matter to them. You know, it's just, we need more Black people and white people who genuinely care about the recipients to be in those higher up roles. Because
the whole system, because you can put those people that care about you, but if they got 200 people on their program, they don't have the time to care. They might care, but they can't do that human approach that Zahirah was mentioning. So it needs a whole system approach. Do I think it'll happen anytime soon? No, but I love the idea.
Yeah, and getting people excluded from it who are just, you know, we have a lot of people who take advantage of the system.
That's a whole nother podcast episode.
next episode.
Right, that's part 2.
that runs real deep. That part runs deep. Like the people who really need it can't get it because the people who don't need it are the ones that's holding the system up. That's a whole nother, yeah. But that runs real deep with that. So
it's scary. I was doing a food bank event a couple weeks ago. So people drive up and they, you know, get food for the week or whatever it is. And I'm like, dang, some people's cars is nicer than mine. And I'm like, you coming to get your free food. And, you know, it's not, I can't assume what's going on in that person's life. But my thing is, if you're driving up in a brand new car with temp tags and things like that, maybe you don't really need you know, food bank food. What about the person that doesn't even have a car to drive up here to be able to get
this? You know what? That's not true. It's a lot of fraud going on.
But if you're living in fraud, you definitely don't deserve to be at the food bank. Like that's for somebody who is
that's what happens.
Food insecurity. But
that's what I'm saying though. That's what happens. You
It's sad and scary.
And you getting your food from the food bank, and you got a car fraud. Like, trust me, it's a lot of fraud going on.
Yeah.
You would never believe how people just fraud the system their whole lives and make it.
And imagine if they put that genius behind doing something like positive or productive. Like they could probably start a whole business and be, you know that.
Right. It's a lady on TikTok that I'm like, she always showing like, yeah, I get food stamps. I get $3,000 in food stamps, and I keep my pantry full, and this and this and that. But it's like people be in her comments like, what's good? Because she was like, I just took $10,000 and bought my husband a new car. People like, but you want food stamps. So how you take it? You know what I'm saying? Fraud in the system. And why are you putting this on your TikTok?
That's so weird to be
seen.
Yeah. So, all right, ladies. I know we on our Saturday, our free Saturday. We could talk forever.
We got to definitely do this again.
Yeah, definitely. It was so good. So we're going to I guess send it to you guys. Who you just send it to?
How do you guys usually end your podcast?
Normally we just thank everyone for listening. We appreciate y'all for listening, and thanks for tuning in to Sistahsss and the JAWN.
Let's plug we can plug our stuff though.
Please, yes. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah.
So we're on Instagram at _JAWN _podcast. We're on TikTok at the JAWN Podcast. We're on Facebook as the JAWN Podcast. So you can pretty much find us on all platforms.
Yeah, we're on Apple, we're on Google, we're on Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible. We're on everywhere. Yeah, from our Facebook page, the JAWN Podcast, Just Ambitious Women Networking, you can actually listen to the podcast directly from the Facebook page. We're on Anchor. We're like on everything. So
that's all. We got to talk to y'all about that distribution because we got to figure out how to do that too.
Yeah, definitely. It's so simple. You guys already got the element. We've seen that yesterday. You got the element. It's simple. It's simple.
Awesome. All right, we'll talk about that. But thanks so much for listening today, and we will be back soon.
Thanks, ladies.
Thank you.